Sir, don't give her power of attorney. The girl's voice rang out sharp, steady, and completely out of place. A pen froze in midair. Every head in the boardroom turned. The silence that followed was electric. Seated at the head of the walnut conference table on the 45th floor of Hargrove Tower, billionaire Richard Hargrove blinked once, his hand still hovering above the dotted signature line. His wife, Clara Wells, elegant in her navy silk suit, didn't move. Her smile, however, tightened ever so slightly. "Excuse me?" Clara said, her voice still smooth but now wrapped in ice. Maya Johnson stood just inside the doorway, the badge on her chest reading, "Service Personnel." Her borrowed black sneakers squeaked slightly as she stepped forward, holding nothing but a folded document she had clearly studied like scripture. She was 17, dark-skinned, with a high ponytail and the kind of gaze that didn't waver even under the glare of 6 board members, 2 legal counsels, and the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. "I read the clause," Maya said. "Section 7, Subpart C, Line 5. If he signs this, he gives full legal authority over all trust and corporate decisions to her. There are no sunset clauses, no limitations, no fiduciary guardrails. That's not delegation. That's surrender." Richard's fingers slowly lowered the pen to the table. The room didn't breathe. Clara broke the silence with a small laugh. "That's absurd. She's the janitor's daughter. This is outrageous, Richard, please." One of the lawyers, a man in his 50s with silver temples and a Harvard ring, cleared his throat and reached for the packet. He flipped to the page Maya had mentioned, his brows furrowed. Just 12 hours earlier, Maya had been mopping the floor outside the executive copier room when she heard the machine whirring. No one else was around. A thick packet had been left on the tray, marked, "Final Authority Transfer, Hargrove Holdings." She wouldn't have touched it, but something instinct maybe made her glance closer. She saw Clara's name on the first page and a signature line for Richard Hargrove at the bottom. The words, "Unrestricted Legal Delegation," were bolded in a subclause. She picked it up, her hands trembling, and read every line under the flickering hallway light. Her gut turned cold. By the time she got home that night, she'd read the document 3 more times. She cross-checked terms in old legal textbooks her grandfather left behind. What she saw wasn't a mistake. It was a trap. Maya stood straighter now. "Sir, you've trusted this company for decades, but this clause, it skips legal review. If she signs anything in your name, there is no oversight." A junior executive at the far end of the table tapped at his iPad. "She's not wrong," he said cautiously. "There's no co-signature language." Richard's face was unreadable. He finally turned his eyes on Maya. "How do you even know to look for that?" "My grandfather used to be a legal clerk before he passed," she said quietly. "I grew up reading contracts instead of comic books." And what were you doing with this file?" Clara snapped. "It was left in the copy room last night. I didn't steal it. I just saw it. And once I saw it, I couldn't pretend I didn't." Clara's voice dropped, now directed at security. "Please escort her out." A guard stepped forward, but Richard raised a hand. "Wait." Maya's heart hammered in her chest. Her fingers trembled, but she kept them locked behind her back. "Clara," Richard said slowly, eyes still on Maya, "why wasn't this clause flagged by legal?" Clara's tone sharpened. "Because it's boilerplate language. It's nothing unusual." "It's not," Maya whispered. "What was that?" Richard asked. "It's not boilerplate," Maya repeated, louder this time. "It was custom drafted. There's a reference to an inactive Delaware holding shell. I looked it up." The lawyer paused. "She's right again." "Enough," Clara said sharply, but her voice had lost some of its gloss. Maya looked at Richard, directly this time. "I know I'm not supposed to be here. I know people like me don't get to speak in rooms like this. But I also know that once you sign that paper, it'll take 10 years and a federal court to undo it." The guard took her elbow, and she didn't resist. She turned to leave, walking with her head high. Just before the door closed behind her, Richard's voice echoed across the polished wood and tension. "Wet." Everyone turned. Maya looked back. Their eyes met. And for a moment, not long, just long enough he didn't see a janitor's daughter. He saw something else. He saw someone telling the truth. His pen never touched the page. Outside, in the hallway, Maya exhaled for the first time in minutes. She hadn't planned on speaking, but when she saw the clause, something in her refused to stay silent. And now, even if the consequences came hard and they would, she'd said it. She had said the thing no one else dared to. And somewhere, far above her head, in the silence of a billionaire's private office, the future of an empire had just changed direction. Before we dive into the story, we'd love to know what state and city are you watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like if this story speaks to you. The rain had started just as Maya stepped out of the revolving glass doors. Not the kind that danced on your shoulders, but the kind that soaked your collarbone in seconds and made you question whether the sky was punishing you. She didn't run. She walked steadily down Lexington Avenue, ignoring the looks, ignoring her soaked hoodie clinging to her arms, and especially ignoring the burning lump sitting squarely in her throat. Her mother wouldn't be proud. Not tonight. They had warned her. Don't meddle, don't speak, and certainly don't call out billionaires in boardrooms. But the document was still fresh in her Mendivery clause, every comma, every quiet betrayal baked into clean legalese. She was halfway down 54th Street when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You saw it too? She stopped in place. Maya's fingers trembled as she typed back. Who is this? The reply came instantly. Someone who tried to stop it before. Meet me. 8:30. Old Greenpoint Library. Come alone. Her first instinct was to delete it. Her second was to run. But something deeper, call it instinct, call it duty, told her to go. By 8:15, she stood under the cracked limestone archway of the abandoned Greenpoint Library. The place had closed 5 years earlier, but the skeleton of its grandeur remained. Wrought iron gates, marble steps worn smooth, and an old brass plaque that read, "Truth is the first chapter of justice." Fitting. The door creaked open. Inside, a tall man with close-cropped gray hair leaned against a pillar, arms folded, wearing a coat that had seen one too many winters. He looked like someone who used to matter then stopped trying to. "You're Maya," he said. Not a question. "And you are?" He extended a hand. "Gregory Marsden. Used to be head of internal compliance at Hargrove Holdings. Until I started asking the wrong questions." Maya didn't shake his hand. "How did you find me? You made a ripple today. Bigger than you think. The boardroom has cameras. Not all of them corporate." She glanced around. "This place have cameras too?" Gregory half smiled. "Number, just mold and ghosts." He reached into his coat and handed her a manila envelope. "What is this?" "Proof that what you saw today wasn't a one-time thing. Clara Wells has been engineering legal entrapments through proxy firms for the last 3 years. She's been feeding Richard documents embedded with clauses designed to shift liability silently. Each time he signs, more control leaves his hands." Maya opened the envelope. Inside were printouts, offshore bank statements, document comparison charts, digital fingerprints. Too much to process in one glance. But her eyes caught a single header in bold. Raven Cross Holdings, Subsidiary Manipulation Ledger. "I don't get it," she whispered. "Why would she need all this? Isn't being his wife enough?" Gregory's voice turned low. "Because wives can be left out of wills. Legal proxies can't." Maya's breath caught. Gregory looked past her, into the dark. "I tried bringing it up last year, got reassigned, then terminated, with an NDA and a settlement. They erased my access, my pension, and my email, but not my memory." "Why me?" Maya asked. "Why now?" "Because you're the only one who wasn't supposed to see it and still did. You don't have anything to lose." "That's not true," she said quietly. "I have my mom. I have a future I hoped for." Gregory studied her. "Then think carefully. You go down this path. There's no going back." Maya looked down at the file again. Names. Transactions. Shell firms registered in the Virgin Islands. Legal signatures that mirrored Richard's but weren't his. "Will he believe me?" she asked. Gregory shook his head. "Number. But he might believe himself if you push him to look." She held the folder tighter, something inside her chest coiling. "I need to get home," she said. Gregory nodded. "You have my number now. But be careful. They have eyes in places you don't expect." As she turned to leave, he added, "And Maya? Don't trust elevators. Always take the stairs." The rain had stopped, but the street still glistened under yellow sodium light when Maya reached her apartment in Queens. Their one-bedroom walk-up sat above a laundromat, and her mother's shoes were by the door. Inside, the television was off. Her mother sat at the kitchen table, arms folded. "Where have you been?" Denise asked. Maya dropped the envelope on the table. "Trying to make sure I don't grow up in a world where lies win." Denise didn't answer right away. She stood, pulled a towel from the counter, and draped it over her daughter's shoulders. "You said something today that made powerful people look up. That makes you dangerous." "I didn't want to be dangerous." "Doesn't matter. You are." Maya sank into the old recliner. Her eyes flicked to the ceiling. "He almost signed it, Mom. He almost gave away everything because of one word: trust." Denise sighed. "People like us don't have the luxury to trust." Maya reached into the envelope, pulled out a printout, and pointed. "Then let's make sure they learn not to either." That night, long after the hum of the city faded, Maya lay awake, the folder beside her, and Gregory's words ringing in her ears. "You don't have anything to lose." He was wrong. She had everything to fight for. And now, she knew where to start. Richard Hargrove hadn't slept. Not a minute. The sun was rising over the East River, brushing soft gold across the glass walls of his penthouse office, and still he sat motionless at his desk, eyes fixed on the document that had nearly rewritten his legacy. It lay open, half-folded, page 14 clipped with a silver pen. The signature line was still empty. The air was quiet, too quiet for Manhattan. He had read the clause, over and over. And now, the more he stared at it, the more it mocked him. How many had he signed just like it? Richard had built Hargrove Holdings from a single inheritance and 2 fingers of grit. He remembered negotiating their first acquisition from the back of a rented Buick with 1 broken taillight and a laptop running on battery fumes. Now, everything bore his name, and, increasingly, Clara's fingerprints. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. Clara. Beautiful, brilliant, relentless Clara. She had always been persuasive, especially when he was tired, distracted, or trying too hard to keep the board calm. She spoke like a diplomat and moved like a queen. But had she also maneuvered him? His email pinged. Subject line: unusual clause language. Flagged. It was from Ken Marlowe, General Counsel. Sent at 2:04 a.m. Sir, upon closer inspection, Miss Johnson's observations appear to have merit. Clause 7C grants irrevocable decision-making power to the assignee, Mrs. Clara Wells, with no limitation on scope or duration. This exceeds standard power of attorney language. We are cross-referencing against prior agreements. Urgent review recommended. Richard's pulse climbed slowly, like a tide building behind a dam. He picked up his office phone and dialed the in-house records team. "I want every contract Clara ever prepared for my signature in the last 18 months. Hard copies, no delays." "Yes, sir." As he waited, he opened a drawer and removed a folder he hadn't touched in years, labeled Estate Delegations, Personal plus Corporate. Inside were older, draft simple, modest, co-signed. The difference was immediate, subtle but unmistakable. The new clause wasn't just dense, it was weaponized. By 10:30 a.m., his office was covered in paper. Rows of contracts spread across the floor like a battlefield. He had 2 legal assistants organizing them by date, another highlighting key phrases. He stood in the center, arms crossed, watching his legacy unravel 1 line at a time. He didn't even look up when Clara entered. "Well, this is dramatic," she said, folding her arms as she stepped around the scattered pages. "Staging a coup or just cleaning house?" Richard glanced at her, expression unreadable. "Tell me again why you needed full legal control over my trusts." Clara's smile didn't waver. "Because you said you were tired, remember? You wanted to streamline approvals. We talked about this. I don't recall authorizing the removal of oversight committees." "You're getting paranoid, Richard. That girl who shouldn't even have been in the room has you rattled. She saw something no one else did. She's 17. She's not wrong." Clara's eyes narrowed. "Are you really going to throw away our foundation because of a janitor's daughter?" "No," he said, lifting one of the documents. "I'm throwing it away because of your signature on 6 separate delegations that bypassed board review." Clara's tone shifted, harder now. "You built this company on loyalty. Don't forget who stood beside you when no one else believed. I'm not forgetting, he said evenly. I'm reevaluating. There was a long silence. Clara stared at the wall of contracts, the half-drunk coffee on his desk, the tired man in front of her who was no longer as pliable. You're letting suspicion ruin what we've built, she said softly, trying again. All of this, Suzette, only works if we trust each other. Richard finally looked at her directly. Then why did I have to hear the truth from a girl who scrubs the floors? She didn't answer. She didn't blink. Instead, she turned and left the office without another word. By noon, the legal team had confirmed it. At least 4 of the signed delegations had language that could enable Clara to restructure holdings, approve mergers, and transfer equity without Richard's explicit participation. One of them had already been filed with the state attorney's office under her name. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. 1 audio file. No subject. He hesitated, then pressed play. Clara's voice, clear as crystal. He won't question it. Not if I push at the right time. Then a male voice, Howard Vance. Richard recognized the cadence instantly. And if he does? Vance asked. We remind him what he has to lose. Richard's jaw clenched. His eyes stayed open, but his chest felt like it was closing in. He replayed it. Twice. 3 times. And then he emailed the clip to his personal attorney. His hands steady now, his eyes sharper. This wasn't just about Clara. This was about how far the rot had spread. Across town, in a quiet corner of a public library, Maya Johnson sat at a computer, scrolling through legal databases she had no paid access to, using every loophole Gregory had taught her. The printouts were growing. So were the questions. She stared at the screen, lips pressed together, and whispered, "They buried it in plain sight." Then she opened a blank document and typed 4 words across the top. They almost got him. She glanced out the window at the Hargrove Tower in the distance. It glinted like nothing could touch it. But Maya knew better now. Sometimes the tallest buildings fall from cracks you can't see. Yet, the USB drive burned cold in Maya's pocket as she stepped off the Q train and crossed under the Manhattan Bridge. The city hadn't noticed her, just another girl in a hoodie, moving through its veins. But she was carrying a fire, and she knew it now. Inside that tiny black drive was the first undeniable proof. Legal signatures, offshore structures, email trails. Gregory had sent it anonymously the night before, attached to a simple message. Ravencross Holdings. Start there. She walked fast past the deli where she and her mom used to buy Sunday donuts, past the iron gates of PS 103 where she'd once read legal thrillers under the slide, and into the back room of a Vietnamese cafe in Chinatown, where Victoria Chan was already waiting. Victoria was older than Maya, expected mid-40s maybe, but not in the way that dulled her edge. She wore a dark blazer, no makeup, and a stare that stripped lies to the bone. You brought it? She asked. Maya nodded, placed the USB on the table, and slid it forward like it was radioactive. Victoria inserted it into her laptop, eyes scanning as lines of data unfolded across the screen. Her brows rose by the 3rd folder. Gregory wasn't bluffing, she muttered. This is internal. Signatures, fund transfer patterns, Cayman, Zurich, BVI. She tapped a few keys, opened a second window, cross-referenced an old merger file. Ravencross was listed as a back-channel entity in at least 2 of Clara's process deals. What does that mean? Maya asked. It means the same scheme's been running for years. Set up a dummy firm, push through a merger or legal transfer, use legal authority to reroute liability. Then Clara and her network walk away richer, leaving the fallout to Richard or whoever else is blind enough to trust her. Maya sat back in the worn wooden chair. So she wasn't just controlling the company, she was building a whole trapdoor system underneath it. Victoria turned the screen toward her. And this? This is the first real crack in the marble. Outside, a garbage truck clanked over potholes. Maya stared at the spreadsheet, overwhelmed but strangely calm. If I could see it, she said. Why didn't his lawyers? Because they weren't supposed to. Because people like Clara don't leave anything to chance. And because power like that doesn't expect anyone who scrubs floors to read footnotes. Victoria leaned forward. Tell me what you want, Maya. Protection? Recognition? Compensation? Maya shook her head. I want it to stop. There was a pause, long and respectful. You may have just handed me the case of my career, Victoria said quietly, but it's also the most dangerous one I've touched. You're not just threatening a woman's ambition, you're pulling the curtain on a whole machine. Then we better pull hard. Later that night, Maya sat alone in the living room as her mother dozed off in the recliner. The soft buzz of the television played a rerun of Jeopardy, but Maya wasn't watching. She was looking through the file names Victoria had copied to her laptop. One stood out: C. Wells. Legal proxy authorization. Vance merge. She clicked. It opened a signed document dated 6 months earlier, transferring temporary voting power over Richard's personal investment fund to Clara in preparation for strategic joint acquisitions. It bore Howard Vance's countersignature. Her stomach tightened. It was always him. Vance was the hinge. Just as she saved the file, a new message popped up. Unknown sender. You're being watched. She froze. Another message followed. Look under Raven Cross transfers. Week of May 4th. Clara didn't just funnel cash. She funneled people. Her hands moved before her fear could catch up. She found the file. Opened the ledger from May 4th. Line 17. Wire transfer to MS Holdings. $720,000. Consulting package. Attached. Intake file. Clearance ID. G. Marsden. Gregory. They paid someone to disappear him. She slammed the laptop shut and stood, heart pounding. A dozen thoughts raced through her head, but one drowned out the rest. He was right. Across the city, in a private suite at the Carlton, Clara Wells stood on the balcony, phone to her ear. I thought you said the file was dead, she hissed. Vance's voice came through smooth as silk. It was. I watched him hand it off, but I didn't think the girl would know what to do with it. She knew. Well, he sighed. She knows now. What do you want me to do? Clara was silent for a beat. Then, remind her she's still a janitor's daughter. The next morning, Maya opened her locker at school and found a note folded neatly on top of her books. No envelope. Just 4 words, printed in block letters. Stay quiet. Stay safe. She read it twice, then a third time. Her breath caught. Her palms went cold, but she didn't crumple it. She folded it once more, slid it into her back pocket, and walked straight to the principal's office. Can I help you? The secretary asked. Maya's voice didn't shake. Yes, I need to report a threat. That afternoon, Victoria Chan filed a formal motion for whistleblower protection under the Federal Corporate Fraud Accountability Act. Maya Johnson's name was coded behind initials in sealed court documents, but the message sent through legal channels was clear. A storm was coming, and it would have a voice. Back at the top of Hargrove Tower, Richard sat in his office, blinds drawn, a steaming mug of black coffee untouched on his desk. He stared out over a skyline that now felt like it was shifting beneath him. The more he saw, the less he recognized the world he had built. He picked up the phone and called the one person left who hadn't lied to him yet. Victoria, he said when she answered, I think it's time we meet. Maya watched the city from the bus that evening, her backpack heavy with pages no one wanted read. She clutched a flash drive in her palm. Beneath her breath, she whispered, They think they know the game. She looked out the window again. But I've read the rules now. The chandelier flickered above the marble foyer of Hargrove Tower's executive residence. Richard stood near the fireplace, hands behind his back, jaw tight. His phone still buzzed with alerts, internal memos, legal red flags, security pings. But he ignored them all. Tonight, there would be no distractions, only answers. Clara entered like a storm in silk midnight-colored dress, earrings catching the low light, the click of her heels echoing down the hallway. She didn't look surprised to see him waiting. I thought you were at the foundation gala, she said, dropping her clutch on the entry table. I canceled. She glanced at the scotch glass untouched on the mantel. How dramatic. You and I need to talk, Richard said. His voice was low, but it held steel. About what? Clara's smile was practiced, polished. The girl? The contracts? Or the latest bit of paranoia your new pet lawyer is feeding you? He turned slowly. You forged my initials on a transfer clause, transferred discretionary control over the Hargrove family fund to Raven Cross Holdings, then masked it under language you knew my legal team wouldn't flag unless they read it backward. Clara's expression didn't falter. You've been under pressure. I took initiative. You committed fraud. I protected you. Number. Richard walked toward her, voice rising. You built a puppet empire beneath mine, and you nearly convinced me to sign over power of attorney like I was a sick man with no mind left. Don't be theatrical. He stopped inches from her. I listened to the audio, the one you and Vance didn't think would survive. Her composure cracked just slightly, a twitch in her jaw, a flinch behind her eyes. You broke into my files? She said. You left a trail. Or maybe, he said with bitter clarity, you just got too confident. You thought I'd never look. Clara turned away, walking toward the window, arms folded across her chest. I did what I had to do. To what? Inherit a company I built with my hands? To protect it from you, she snapped, spinning back to face him. From your sentiment, your softness. You spend your days handing out scholarships and second chances, while people like Vance tighten their grip. You think integrity alone will keep the wolves at bay? Richard stared at her. I thought we were partners. We were, she said, until I realized you'd rather be admired than feared. A long silence fell between them. He broke it. You don't love me. Clara didn't answer. That girl you tried to erase her. Not just from the company, from the map. She threatened everything. She told the truth. Truth is relative, Clara whispered. Power isn't. Richard stepped back, chest rising and falling. You need to leave. Tonight. Her laugh was soft, almost pitiful. You think it's that easy? I'm your wife. Half of your holdings carry my signature. You forged those signatures. You'll have to prove it. I will, he said quietly. But not alone. At that moment, the elevator dinged outside the residence hall. Clara tensed. She turned her head slightly. Who did you bring here? The door opened, and Victoria Chan stepped inside, flanked by two internal compliance officers. Clara's lips parted, but she said nothing. We've initiated a full audit, Victoria said, stepping forward. Everything under your authority, every transaction, every proxy vote. Your access has been frozen as of 30 minutes ago. You're bluffing, Clara said, but her voice lost its edge. You'll be receiving formal notice in the morning, Victoria continued. Right now, we're here to collect immediate records and secure key accounts. And no, this isn't a legal ambush. It's a corporate rescue. Clara's eyes darted between Victoria and Richard. Then, slowly, she backed toward the door. I hope you know what you're starting, she said to her husband. Vance doesn't take betrayal lightly. Richard didn't respond. He simply watched her leave. As the doors closed behind her, Victoria turned to him. That was brave. And dangerous. I've been both before, he said, his voice distant. But this time, I have help. That same night, on the edge of Queens, Maya sat cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through new files Victoria had sent her. The room was dim, except for the screen's glow. Outside, the sirens came and went like they always did, but her ears were tuned to something else, now patterns, numbers, logic hidden beneath the noise. She paused on one email thread. Subject, strategic silence, sent from Clara's private account to Howard Vance. He's beginning to waver. If he pulls out, the fallback account must be activated. Don't let the girl show up in the news. I don't care what it takes. Maya didn't blink. Her mom peeked through the doorway, holding a mug of warm milk. You've been at it for hours. I'm close, Maya murmured. To what? To showing the world who's really pulling the strings. Denise stepped in, setting the mug beside her. I'm proud of you, she said softly. Maya looked up. Even if it puts us both at risk? Her mother placed a hand on her daughter's cheek. Especially then. Somewhere across the city, in a black SUV speeding down Park Avenue, Clara dialed a secured line. He moved, she said coldly. He brought in the lawyer. Vance's voice replied after a long beat. Then we adjust the timeline. She stared ahead, her reflection faint in the glass. We're not losing this. No, Vance agreed. We're just getting started. In the dark, Maya reached for her Sharpie and wrote 3 words across the top of a fresh page. They blinked first. The next morning, Maya stood across the street from Hargrove Tower with a backpack slung over one shoulder and a flash drive burning in her palm. Traffic buzzed behind her, horns and footsteps blurring into the hum of the city. She'd done this walk 100 times late nights with her mom, wiping down glass doors and elevators while executives stared through them like they were invisible. Not anymore. She crossed at the light and approached the main entrance. The security team had changed. New badges, new posture. As she stepped inside, one of the guards raised a hand. "You're not on the list." She hesitated, then held up the flash drive. "Tell Mr. Hargrove I'm here. He said if I ever came back, he'd want to see me." The guard narrowed his eyes. "Name? Maya Johnson." He stepped away to radio the upper floors. The silence between each breath grew heavier. Maya tried not to grip the strap of her bag too tight, but her fingers didn't listen. Then the elevator dinged. A junior staffer, she recognized a man she used to see grabbing coffee late at night, stepped forward and nodded subtly. "Come on, I'll take you up." She exhaled, heart rattling, and followed him in. The elevator climbed slow and smooth. The silence inside wasn't awkward, it was reverent. The staffer said nothing, just glanced at her once with a look that said, "Thank you." That said, "We saw." That said, they never expected it to be you. At the 45th floor, the doors opened into sunlight and cold marble. Richard Hargrove was waiting. He wasn't behind his desk this time. He stood by the tall windows, hands in his pockets, tie loosened. When he saw her, he didn't move like a CEO. He moved like a man who'd nearly fallen off a cliff and just realized who pulled him back. "Maya," he said. She nodded. "I brought something." He gestured toward the private conference room. "Let's sit." Inside, Victoria Chan was already waiting, flipping through a legal binder. She looked up, offered a small nod, and pushed a chair out with her foot. They sat around the table, papers, laptops, and coffee cups between them. Maya pulled out her flash drive and handed it to Richard. "It's from Gregory," she said, before he disappeared. Victoria inserted it. The screen lit up. Dozens of files unfolded: financial statements, confidential email threads, internal drafts of asset transfer agreements. At the center, a folder titled Fallback Protocols, Raven Cross. Maya pointed. "That one." Inside were documents that made Richard's breath stop. Clara's signature authorizing the emergency liquidation of select company assets. A second file routing funds to a legal firm registered in the British Virgin Islands. Another approval dated 3 days before under his name, forged. "They were going to gut us," Victoria said, her voice low. From the inside, Richard leaned back, the weight settling on him all over again. Victoria looked at Maya. "You understand what this means, right? This isn't just fraud, it's systematic abuse of executive power. Clara and Vance didn't just try to take your company, they've been using it." Maya nodded. "I figured. But I didn't know how deep it went." Victoria turned to Richard. "We need to move now. Federal protection, injunctions, full exposure. If they think you're hesitating, they'll accelerate everything." Richard didn't answer immediately. He looked at Maya instead. "Why did you come back?" he asked softly. "Because I saw it," she said, voice steady. "And once you see something like this, you can't unsee it." He stared at her, then slowly nodded. "You're braver than most men I've known." Maya's voice didn't waver. "I'm just not scared of dirt. I grew up cleaning it." Victoria opened her briefcase and laid out a roadmap. Whistleblower filings, press strategy, legal motions. She moved with the calm of someone who'd fought these battles before and won. But the moment was broken by a vibration in Maya's bag. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Stop. Now. Or it's your mother." Her throat closed. Victoria noticed the change in her face. "What is it?" Maya showed her the message. Richard stood, fists clenched. "They're threatening her now?" Victoria grabbed her phone, already calling the protection unit. "We'll get a marshal on her immediately." Maya shook her head. "Number I need to get to her. She's at work at the laundry. She won't answer calls if she's on shift." Richard grabbed his jacket. "I'm coming with you. You don't have to. I'm not letting them touch you, or her." 30 minutes later, they arrived at the laundromat in Queens. Maya burst through the back door. Her mother was folding towels, calm as ever. "Mom!" Maya ran to her, arms already out. "Are you okay?" Denise blinked. "I'm fine. What's going on?" Maya's hands were shaking. "They sent a threat. They said..." Richard stepped in, his presence filling the room like thunder. "You're safe. I promise." Denise looked at him, then at her daughter. "This has gone too far." Maya's voice cracked. "I didn't start it, but I'm going to finish it." That night, Clara stood in a candlelit study, watching live footage from a news channel. A leak had begun rumors of whistleblowers, internal audits, asset freezes. Her phone buzzed again and again, but she ignored it. Vance sat across from her, swirling whiskey in a glass. "He's not backing down," he said. "Neither is the girl." Clara's eyes were cold. "Then maybe it's time we remind them what silence costs." Across town, Maya sat beside her mother on the couch. A fresh bruise of fear lingered under her ribs, but her eyes were bright. Victoria called. "The Justice Department is watching. We're not alone." And Maya whispered back, "Good." Because this time, she wasn't the girl no one noticed. She was the storm they didn't see coming. The sky over Manhattan was a moody gray, the kind that warned of rain but never committed. Inside Hargrove Tower, however, the atmosphere was far less uncertain. Every corner of the 45th floor buzzed with tension. Emails had stopped. Conversations were clipped. Eyes glanced, then quickly looked away. Something was coming, and everyone could feel it. At precisely 9 a.m., the executive boardroom filled. 12 seats, 11 board members, one empty chair at the head. The door opened, and Richard Hargrove entered, no jacket, tie loosened, sleeves rolled, the kind of look he wore when he was rebuilding something from the ground up. He wasn't smiling. Behind him walked Victoria Chan, legal binder under one arm, and Maya Johnson, her chin high, eyes locked forward, like she belonged there all along. A few board members exchanged surprised glances. One cleared his throat, as if preparing to object, but didn't speak. Richard took his seat. "We're not going through the agenda today," he said, voice even but resolute. "We're going through the truth." He tapped the table. Victoria connected her laptop to the screen at the front of the room. What came up first wasn't a spreadsheet or a legal brief. It was a photograph. 3 signatures, circled in red. One was his. The board leaned in. "Over the last 18 months, Victoria began, a series of transfers, delegations, and forged authorizations were processed through this company. The common element across all of them was the use of proxy shell companies like Raven Cross Holdings, tied directly to Clara Wells and Howard Vance." She clicked again. A second document appeared, showing offshore transfers with Clara's name embedded in the metadata. "This company," Victoria continued, "was being hollowed out from the inside. Every signature Mr. Hargrove believed he was making in good faith was, in many cases, altered, rewritten, or slipped into bundles designed to avoid detection." Someone near the end of the table let out a low breath. Another board member shook his head. Maya stepped forward, voice steady. "I'm the one who found it. I wasn't supposed to. But when you clean the rooms no one pays attention to, you start to notice the dirt." A pause. Richard looked around the room. "Some of you knew. Some suspected. Some of you probably trusted Clara the same way I did, quietly, without question. But today, we put an end to that." The screen flickered again. A list of dates and internal approvals scrolled down, each marked with an account code now frozen by federal order. "The Department of Justice has opened an inquiry," Victoria said. "We have filed whistleblower protection for Miss Johnson. But this is bigger than one woman. This is about the future of what Hargrove Holdings stands for." "Oh." A rustle of discomfort. Someone murmured, "What happens now?" Victoria smiled tightly. "Now? Now you decide. Help clean this house from the inside, or watch it burn from the outside." Silence gripped the room. Then slowly, one by one, heads nodded. Richard stood, lifted a document from the folder in front of him, and handed it to the chairman of the compliance committee. "Begin the audit, effective immediately." As the boardroom emptied, Maya lingered behind. Richard turned to her. "You didn't have to come today." "Yes," she said quietly. "I did." He looked at her, and something shifted behind his eyes. "I see you now." She gave a faint smile. "I wasn't invisible. You just weren't looking." That afternoon, Clara Hargrove stepped off a private elevator into the east wing of the Lakeshore Club, where she had arranged a meeting with Vance in a private cigar lounge. The room smelled of leather and quiet power. He was already there, legs crossed, drink in hand. "You heard," she said, sliding into the booth. "Of course." They moved fast. She brought the lawyer. The girl, too. Vance chuckled, slow and low. "I underestimated her. That's my mistake." "We can still contain this," Clara said, though her voice lacked conviction. "There are names, judges, reporters, 2 federal clerks. We bury them, or we bury this company. He set his drink down. You're assuming it's not already buried. Clara stiffened. She's just a child. No, Vance said, standing. She's a symbol, and symbols don't die in silence. They burn through noise. Back in Queens, Maya returned home to find her mother waiting with a pot of stew and the newspaper folded on the table. The front page read, "Whistleblower halts multi-million. Dollar power grab at Hargrove Holdings." Below the headline, a grainy image of Maya leaving the building, shoulders squared. Denise said nothing at first. Then, quietly, "You didn't run." I couldn't," Maya replied. "Not when I saw how deep it went." Her mother placed a bowl in front of her. "Then eat. Revolution or not, you're still my daughter, and I won't have you going to war on an empty stomach." Maya laughed softly, and for the first time in weeks, it wasn't laced with fear. Later that evening, her phone lit up again. An encrypted message. From Gregory. "They know I'm alive, but they won't find me. Keep going. I'm still watching." She typed only 2 words in reply. "We're winning." Somewhere across the city, Vance stared at the digital feed of Maya's press exit, then at Clara, who paced behind him in circles. "She's still a kid," Clara muttered. "They'll never let her bring us down." Vance's voice was cold now, flat. "Kids don't bring down empires, but movements do." And she just became one. He stood up, closed his briefcase, and turned to the door. "Let's break her," he said, "before she becomes something permanent." But the boardroom had already shifted, and the girl they ignored was now the voice they couldn't silence. Courtroom 12B smelled like old wood and pressure. The walls were paneled in oak, and the seal of the United States District Court hung above the judge's bench like a silent promise. Truth would be heard here or else it would be forced to. On the left side of the gallery, press badges glinted beneath fluorescent lights. On the right, rows of attorneys whispered behind yellow legal pads. But at the center of it all sat a 17-year-old girl in a navy sweater and pressed slacks, hands folded tightly in her lap. Maya Johnson didn't blink. Beside her, Victoria Chan reviewed her notes, calm and precise, her fingers moving like a pianist's. On Maya's other side, Denise held her daughter's hand with both of hers, quiet but rooted. Across the aisle sat Clara Wells, statuesque in slate gray, lips pressed into a perfect line. And beside her, as always, was Howard Vanson bothered, sipping ice water like he was in a boardroom instead of a courtroom. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Margaret Breckenridge entered, her robes heavy and her eyes sharp. She surveyed the room in a single sweep, then took her seat. "We are here today to hear testimony in the matter of Hargrove Holdings versus Clara Wells and Howard Vance, on charges including but not limited to conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, wire fraud, forgery, and obstruction." The case was open. Victoria stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to call our first witness, Maya Johnson." A stir moved through the gallery. Reporters leaned forward. Some spectators exchanged whispers. Maya stood slowly, walked to the stand, and placed her hand on the Bible. "I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." Victoria approached with the ease of someone who had walked this road many times before. "Miss Johnson, how did you come to be involved in this matter?" "Maya met Hargaze. I was helping my mom clean the 45th floor of Hargrove Tower. It was late. Someone had left a file in the copier tray. I saw the name, Legal Delegation Authorization, on the cover. I recognized the formatting. I read the whole thing right there on the floor. Did you understand what you were reading?" "I didn't understand every legal term, but I knew it wasn't right. It gave Clara Wells complete control over Mr. Hargrove's personal and corporate trusts with no limits, no expiration. That's not normal." Victoria nodded. "What did you do next?" "I warned him, right before he signed it." "And what was the reaction?" Maya paused. "They tried to have me removed. Clara called security. People said I shouldn't have been in the room. Did anyone listen?" Maya turned slightly toward Richard Hargrove, seated at the back. "He did." Victoria moved closer. "Miss Johnson, what would have happened if Mr. Hargrove had signed that document? He would have lost legal control of his entire empire. Clara could have liquidated his assets, merged holdings, sold real estate, or rerouted funds, and he wouldn't have been able to stop her." Victoria let that linger. "No further questions." The judge turned. Cross-examination? Clara's attorney rose, a man with a clipped beard and a patronizing tone. Miss Johnson, you're 17? Yes. You've never worked in a law firm? You're not a certified paralegal? No, sir. And yet, you claim to have understood a legally complex document better than a team of attorneys? I understood enough to know someone was hiding something. A few heads in the jury box nodded, subtly. The attorney frowned. Is it possible you misread the document? I read it 5 times. And then I read the others. The others? Every other delegation Clara filed under Richard Hargrove's name over the last 18 months. They all had the same structure, same loopholes, different shell companies. He paused. So you're saying, under oath, that you alone uncovered a multi-year conspiracy by reading forgotten paperwork? Yes, Maya said simply, because no one else did. A hush rippled across the room. Back at the defense table, Clara's jaw tightened. Next, Richard Hargrove took the stand. Victoria approached. Mr. Hargrove, why did you believe Maya? He looked directly at her. Because I used to be the kind of man who read every word of every deal. Somewhere along the way, I started signing what Clara put in front of me. Maya reminded me what it looks like when someone actually pays attention. And how did you feel when you realized what was happening? Richard's voice dropped. I felt like I'd been asleep while my company was being stolen, and my name was on every dotted line. Victoria paused. And what do you believe Clara's role was? He didn't hesitate. She masterminded it. With Vance. I don't know how long they'd been planning it, but I know this Maya saw it before anyone else did. The judge turned to the defense. Call your witness. Clara stood, walked slowly to the stand. She didn't look at Maya, not once. Her attorney began. Mrs. Wells, did you believe your actions were in the best interest of the company? Clara's voice was smooth. Yes. Did you forge your husband's signature? A pause. Then, I executed documents under pre-approved authority. Did you ever attempt to hide financial transactions? I followed all necessary disclosure procedures. Victoria rose. Permission to play an audio file, Your Honor. The judge nodded. The courtroom fell into silence as the audio played. Clara's voice. He won't question it. Not if I push at the right time. Vance. And if he does? Clara. Then we remind him what he has to lose. The courtroom froze. Clara's shoulders sagged. Victoria approached. Mrs. Wells, did you say those words? Clara stared straight ahead. Yes. Who were you referring to? A pause. Then a breath. My husband. Why? Clara's voice cracked. Because I thought he was too kind to survive the game, and I wasn't going to let him lose everything. And, the judge nodded once, we'll break for the day. Closing arguments tomorrow. As the court emptied, Maya walked into the hallway. Richard followed. You didn't have to be there, he said softly. I wanted to see it through, she replied. He nodded. You've already done more than most people with titles ever dared. Maya smiled faintly. Then maybe titles are overrated. Somewhere behind them, Clara returned to her seat beside Vance. She didn't speak, but her silence said enough. The empire had cracked, and the girl they dismissed was the one who brought the truth into the light. The next morning, the courtroom was quieter than before, but the tension was heavier. The kind of silence that felt dense, loaded, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The press benches were full. The jury sat straighter, and in the first row, Maya sat beside her mother again, holding her hand tightly this time. She wasn't just a witness now. She was part of the fight. Judge Breckenridge entered, her robe swaying slightly, her eyes sharpened by what she had witnessed the day before. We will now hear closing arguments, she announced, her voice resonant but not theatrical. Counselor Chan, proceed. Victoria stood, buttoned her jacket, and stepped into the open space with calm certainty. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've heard a 17-year-old girl piece together a puzzle that millions of dollars worth of executives and advisors either ignored or deliberately buried. You've heard the voice recordings. You've seen the forged paperwork, the unusual delegation clauses, and the systematic erasure of Richard Hargrove's control over his own company. She turned toward the jury. This wasn't negligence. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was betrayal, quiet, polished, and disguised as loyalty, but betrayal nonetheless. She walked slowly. Clara Wells didn't make a mistake. She made a decision. over and over again, to deceive, to consolidate power, to sign documents she had no right to sign, and to shut down anyone who questioned her. Victoria's eyes landed on Maya for a moment, just a flicker. But sometimes, the smallest voice in the room is the one that ends the silence. She stepped back. "Thank you." The defense attorney rose, his voice smoother than his argument. "What you saw was a family dispute elevated by misunderstanding. No theft, no violence. Just a woman trying to protect the legacy of a man she loved." The jury didn't react. Mrs. Wells is not a criminal mastermind. She's a grieving wife, acting out of fear. And Mr. Hargrove, let us not forget, signed every document willingly. At worst, we are talking about bad communication, not fraud. He sat. There was no applause, no energy, just a closing door. The judge nodded. "Jury will now deliberate." And with that, they were gone. Outside, the sky had turned a cooler gray. Maya stood by the courthouse steps, arms folded against the wind. Denise handed her a coffee. "It's almost over." Maya stared out at the sidewalk, her voice quiet. "What if they let her walk?" Denise shook her head. "Then we walk out of here knowing we did everything right. You did everything right." Moments later, a courthouse clerk stepped out. "We have a verdict." The courtroom filled once more. Everyone rose as the judge returned. The jury filed in, their expressions tight and unreadable. The foreman stood. "We, the jury, find Clara Wells guilty on all counts." A collective gasp. Richard closed his eyes briefly. The judge continued. "Sentencing will be scheduled. Court is adjourned." Outside, cameras flashed. Journalists called out names. But Maya didn't stop to answer. She kept walking, down the steps, through the crowd. Not to escape, but to breathe. Richard caught up with her halfway to the sidewalk. "You know," he said, "I built this company thinking I understood people." She smiled faintly. "People change." He nodded. "Yes, and sometimes they surprise you. Maya, I don't want you to go back to cleaning floors." "I wasn't planning on it," she teased. "I'm serious. I want to set up a scholarship fund. In your name. For girls who see what others miss. And if you ever want to come back as an intern, as a consultant, as anything you just call." Maya's throat tightened. "I never wanted anything from you." "I know," he said. "That's why you're the one I trust." Behind them, Clara was being led out in cuffs. Her eyes flicked toward Maya, not with hatred, but with something deeper. Recognition, the kind that came too late. Back in the Johnsons' small apartment that night, Denise lit a candle and made Maya's favorite soup-collard greens and turkey necks, simmered for hours like her own mother used to make. They sat together at the table, quiet at first, then laughing gently about how the judge's gavel was louder than any school bell Maya had ever heard. Maya leaned back, bowl empty. "Do you think people will believe me now?" Denise smiled. "They don't have to believe you, baby. They just need to listen." Later that week, Victoria sent over an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "Maya, there are law firms full of people who couldn't do what you did. If you ever want a mentor or a partner, I'm one call away. Victoria." Maya placed it on her nightstand beside her copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X. Then she turned off the light. She didn't know where she was going yet. But for the first time, the path was hers to choose. And this time, she wasn't walking it in silence.